All right. Let's dive into, I got two losers, and then I have four guys in the middle ground here. So the losers are simple names. I think easy ones people could see coming. First one is Russell Wilson. I mean, you got to practice. You are literally letting, and it's Mike Tomlin. Like Mike Tomlin is doing this to Russell Wilson. But at what you're losing the pole position quarterback battle because you're not on the field. Like you're allowing this to become a real thing when it was the farthest thing from a real thing. There was no quarterback competition coming into the training camp. None whatsoever. Like we would not talk about it because there was nothing to talk about. There is now something to talk about. The fact that Russell Wilson is not practicing gives us something to talk about. That's Mike Tomlin's. That's Mike Tomlin's fault, 100%. And whoever decided that Russell Wilson was going to do lineman drills in a conditioning test, wild times. But because of that, Russell Wilson is a loser. You got to get back out there. You have to get on the field and show everybody there is no quarterback competition. I'm the guy. Because right now, it went from assumptions for both quarterbacks to just assumptions of what Russell Wilson cannot do. And that is lead an offense and look as dynamic and versatile as Justin Fields does right now. You got to get back out there. And the other one's Cordarrelle Patterson. There is at where I stand right now, Jack Colletto, Michael Pruitt, both of them hold higher ground than Cordarrelle Patterson. The fact that he hasn't done anything during OTAs, minicamp, and now training camp means that I have no idea how to judge this guy. He was injured for a lot of last season. Like, what are you getting left of this? That's what my question is you signed an all-pro, potential future Hall of Fame, like, kick returner, and you're working kick returns, and Calvin Austin and Jaylen Warren look good, and you're just thinking, well, they look good. Like, why would we? They're young. They're going to be here for years to come. Why would they not be the guys? Why would you hand the job to Cordarrelle Patterson and then lose a roster spot for guys who have earned roster spots who are going to make a bigger impact on offense for the Steelers? So right now, Cordarrelle Patterson is a name to me that until I see what he can do, I'm assuming that he potentially is on the outside looking in, and there's really, in my eyes, no reason to keep him. I feel like I'm harsh on Cordarrelle Patterson right now, but that's simply because he came in here with a ton of expectations, and you're learning very quickly that he can be replaced, and that's not good for Cordarrelle Patterson. Those are my two losers, Russell Wilson, Cordarrelle Patterson.
Yeah, and the Patterson one is similar to Russell Wilson with one big difference. Patterson is getting it from multiple fronts because he's opening the door for other players, but in running back three, it's Shampklin and Jonathan Ward that are slowly catching him and where he was at tight end. He's not a tight end. At wide receiver, you're seeing Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson step up at returner. It's Calvin Austin and Jaylen Warren. And all of a sudden you're saying, all right, these other players are going to play more roles if they make the roster versus Cordarrelle, who's 35, who's already dealing with injuries. And, who, while he's versatile, there are other players that are versatile on this team. And that is what, the Steelers and Omar Khan have valued this offseason. So you look at that, and from that standpoint, you just simply say, all right, we brought this guy in for a reason, but if he's not on the field and everybody else steps over him, it's going to be hard to make the case to keep him on the roster over somebody else.
Yeah, you could save cap space if you get rid of him. That's the difference between him and a lot of these other guys. It just, if you are looking at a situation where something needs to happen, if you're the Steelers, whether it's a wide receiver trade or a signing, or maybe you have to replace Cole Holcomb, something, that's easy money, the easiest money that you could come up with. The Steelers are not in a good spot with him. I agree with you. He's getting surpassed on every angle here. He's got to get out there. And the truth is that Russ is trying to make progress. I have not seen Cordarrelle do anything but hang out in sweatpants and a hoodie. So I don't even know how close he is or whether or not he's going to be ready for the season. And to me, that's replaceable. It's definitely replaceable. All right, here's my middle ground, because I think they're not losers, but they're just guys that they're not winners. We had higher expectations for them coming in. They haven't met those expectations. I wouldn't classify them as losers for one reason or another. This is who I got. The starter is Troy Fautanu, and I feel like I'm the only one who's criticizing Troy Fautanu, and I won't put him in the losers simply because there are moments where he looks really good. Like, really, like, you're going to stop TJ Watt twice, and that's a win to me. You could suck the rest of the day. That's a victory. You won that day. Troy Fautanu is a middle ground guy. To me, he hasn't earned the starting job. He's not the guy that's going to walk into week one the starter over Dan Moore. But I'm not worried about him. I'm not worried about Troy Fautanu being bad in the NFL. I think he's going to be good in the NFL. I just think he needs more time to develop and adjust and so on and so forth. That's where I stand with Troy. So to me, not a winner, not a loser, middle ground. The next one is Corey Trice. Frankly, Corey Trice would be a loser if in 7 shots he wasn't sometimes running with the ones. So where do we stand? That's where my question is we haven't seen any team drills from him outside of very minimal, like third team, no pads on. Anything with pads, he's not out there. So how cautious are you being with him? How close is he to a return? Where does he stand on the depth chart? We have no idea what's going on with Corey Trice. I would like to know a little bit more. To me right now, until we do know more, there are other names that are coming and going and surpassing him. He needs to start kind of getting some reps. But again, I don't think that's on him at this point. The other two are smaller names. Grayland Arnold, who I thought could come in here and win the starting slot job. I mean, dude, Grady Brown's standing there on the sideline telling him to get out so Beanie Bishop could go in. In my head, that's the end of it. That's the end of the road. Beanie Bishop has won this job. Grayland Arnold's not a loser because the expectations weren't super high for him, but definitely a middle ground guy, not a winner. Scotty Miller's the other one. Scotty looked really good in OTAs and in minicamp, but again, nobody was looking at him as like the superstar of the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver core. So I'm not going to say he's a loser, and he hasn't had a bad training camp. He's just faded a little bit, and I don't know. I'm not going to put him in the Gunnar Olszewski when the pads come on, he disappears, because I don't think that's who he is. I just don't think he holds the same ground that he held a month ago. Those are my middle ground guys: Troy Fautanu, Corey Trice, Grayland Arnold, Scotty Miller.
Yeah, and here's the thing with Fautanu, because I feel like that's the one that we've kind of talked about the most, is there's still time for him to make that progression and still become the starter at some point. He just has to be able to progress from here to the start of the season. There's still, 4 weeks? You still have 3 preseason games. You have plenty of, you have a multi-team scrimmage and practice coming up with the Buffalo Bills in a couple of weeks. There's plenty of opportunities for him to make the jump from where he's at now to where he could be in week 1. And we've all seen the promise, right? You mentioned it, the TJ Watt stuff. He's had other flashes throughout camp that everybody's talked about. He needs to do it on a more consistent basis, because the Steelers, as everybody knows, this is not news to anybody. They slow play all of their rookies as much as humanly possible. If they have another option, they'll take that other option to let the rookie get his feet underneath them at a professional level. We saw it last year. We're going to see it again this year. The difference is this year there are other rookies who don't have as big of hurdles in front of them. So the first rounders being held back because Dan Moore at left and Broderick at right is a viable option for week 1. Whereas Nate Herbig is not as viable at center. So Zach Frazier doesn't have as big of a hurdle to climb. And the same goes for Beanie Bishop. He's going up against Grayland Arnold for the starting slot corner position. It's not as big of a hurdle to climb as a guy in Dan Moore who has over 30 career starts in the National Football League. And while he's not the best left tackle, he's certainly not the worst left tackle either. And if you're going to want to give Fautanu that grace, Moore is good enough to give him that grace for the first handful of weeks until he can get up to that level. So I think that's where it is with Fautanu, is everybody thinks that we're saying, oh, he stinks, he's going to be bad, he's Kendrick Green 2.0. He's not. He's just not there yet. And that doesn't mean that he won't be there by week 1.
Yes. Thank you for ending it that way. It does not mean that he won't be there by week 1. I believe that there's a possibility he will be. And this is a good question from James here. Why does Arthur Smith love Troy and you seem so hard on him? I love Troy's upside. I think he's got phenomenal upside. And that's what Arthur Smith loves in Troy, is the upside, the aggression, the passion, the instincts, everything. Like everything's there for Troy. That's why I'm not worried about this. That's why at no point do I think Troy is a loser of a training camp or looks bad or anything. I'm just simply saying, I'm trying to calm the expectations, because I don't want him to be put into a place where we walk into week 1, he's got to be the starter, and then he struggles in week 1 and everybody's like, this guy sucks. No, it's not where we are, man. Like, if you take this back 10 years ago, rookies don't start all the time. That's where we are. That's where we should stand. Arthur Smith loves the same things I love about Troy Fautanu, and that is how good he is going to be in the NFL. It's just a matter of today. We're talking today. That's where we stand. And this is a great question as well. Did Broderick Jones look better this time last year than Troy does now? Yes. in different ways. Like, for one, Chooks is significantly worse than Dan Moore Jr. Like, that I'm not a Dan Moore Jr. should be a starter in the NFL type of guy. I think he's a phenomenal backup. I think he's a great leader. But Chooks Okorafor was bad, man. So bad. Broderick looked better in certain areas. Like, Broderick was a phenomenal run blocker. So good. But Broderick was also drafted 6 spots ahead of where Troy was, and that's a gap. Like, the top 15 compared to the rest of the draft is different. Like, there's a bit of a drop off, not a significant one. You're all first round talents, but there's a bit of a drop off. I think Broderick looked better at this point last year than Troy does, but I don't think it's by much. I definitely don't think it's by much.